So welcome to Virtualize Everything. Today's project, we're going to work on setting up a Samba share in an Ubuntu container on a proxmox server. But there's quite a bit of exciting things going on here at Virtualize Everything. The first one I want to tell you about is we've embarked on a new project to bring a better server into our lab environment so that we'll be able to show you guys things like GPU pass through and maybe even some cluster development where we'll have two servers to work with. So we're kind of excited about that. Moving on to today's project, which is going to be a Samba share on an Ubuntu container hosted on a proxmox server. So I'm going to bring over the commands here that we plan on using for the day. And then we're going to open up our proxmox web interface. And I've taken the liberty of already creating a container and updating and upgrading it to the newest packages for Ubuntu 19, I think it's 19.010. If you need more information on that, I would suggest going back through our videos. We have videos on both updating and upgrading versions of Debian. The video released last week was for the Raspberry Pi, but the commands in the process are the same for an Ubuntu container. I also have videos on creating a container. So we're going to go ahead and start this container. And then click console. So this is a fresh container, so we're going to go ahead and log in as root. And you use the password you created when you set up the container. Now, the first thing we would normally do is update and upgrade this container. Like I said, we've already done that. So the next step is going to be to create a user group and then to create users. So with Debian or any really version that's based on Debian like Ubuntu, there's two commands that we can use. There's group add or add group. I prefer to use the add group. Now, from my reading, there's some debate in the community whether or not this is a script that runs a high-level process of the group add command that is hard-coded into the distro itself, but I like it. It's a little bit more intuitive and a little less complex for beginners to learn, and I find that I don't make as many mistakes. So we're going to type add group, and we're going to call the group today, let's just call it share. So you can see we added the group. Now we're going to go ahead and create some users. Again, the same thing goes for user add versus add user. So we're going to use add user, and we're just going to call the first user yes. Now, if we were to do user add, we're going to create this user as no so you can see the difference. There's a user created with user add. If you notice, there's no password, there's no anything. So we have to create pass wd no, and now I can go ahead and enter the password. Well, it's just a little more complex, a little more chance to miss steps than using the add user command. Now, we want to add both of these users to some groups. So the easiest way to do that is going to be to use the add user command, and it's the username and the group. The first user is yes. We're going to make that the primary user. So I want to add that to the group sudo. I also want to add that to the group share. Now we're going to add the user no just to share. So the user no will have no super user privileges if they were logged into this system. So now with that, we can exit and use our user yes to log in. And to remove our root user account from this system, we had sudo pass wd -l root. Now we've removed the root user privileges from this container. So from here on out, we're going to have to use sudo because we no longer are a root user, but it's going to make our system a little bit more secure. If somebody was trying to brute force our system, they're going to try usernames like root first, root administrator, both of them first, because they know if they're able to use those roots and they're commonly not secured on systems, they already know a portion of the login credentials. So it's a lot less time consuming for them to break into your system. So now that we've created our users, we're going to run sudo apt install samba-y. This is going to install Samba. If you don't know what Samba is, it's the software that we're going to be using to do our actual file sharing. It works with both Windows and Mac now, and it's pretty much, as far as my understanding, the standard for Linux file sharing. So even if you were using a distro like Open Meteor Vault to set up your file shares instead of building it in a container like we are today, Samba is going to be what the system uses to share those files. So we hit enter and it's going to install. All right, so now that Samba is installed, we're going to just run where is Samba just to make sure that it is installed correctly. And your output should look something like that if it has been installed correctly. So we can move on. So there's many different ways of doing this. I traditionally like to go to the folder that I'm going to create a directory in, but you don't have to do that. You can just enter the file path. But I'm going to go cd/home/yes. Now you don't have to create your user inside of the folder like that. You can create it just about anywhere in your system. But we're going to run mkdir, and then we will create a folder. Let's call it share today. So just to make sure it's in the right place, home/share/yes, and we're going to call it share. So now that that's done, let's go to the Samba config file, and we scroll all the way to the bottom of this file, not altering anything that we see in here till we get to the bottom. And then we can copy and paste these lines in here. If you're following along in the video, you can go ahead and type them, but I will try and provide you with a full list of commands in the video description. So we do need to do some editing here. We can call this whatever we want. YouTube _test, whatever we want to call it. Comments can be anything. Now, our file path that we created the directory in is this. So that's what we'll enter. And then we just press Control X, Y to save, and enter. Now we can go ahead and restart the Samba service. And now we need to run a few commands to give permission to the user and the group that we created earlier for this file. So the first one is going to be chown. And again, we need to fill our file path in. So we're creating the user yes as the owner of this file, and we're saying that anybody in the group share is also assigned as being able to do things with this file. Now, what they can do, we'll have to configure with the next command. I believe I need to run this command as sudo. There we go. Now, the next command is going to be chmod, and we need to modify what users can do to this file. So this is pretty much, from my understanding, the bare minimum privileges that you can give to a user and a group that you want to have read-write privileges over top of a share. So if you have a share and you want more than the creator user account to be able to have read-write access, this is what you would give them. So U is user, G is group, and their privileges equal read, write, and execute. Now, comma O means other users equal no privileges at all. Now, you could say you want to distribute maybe ISOs out to your friends, but you don't want them to be able to upload or change anything in your file. You could do U equals RWX, comma G equals read dash X, comma O equals nothing. Or you could do UGO equals RWX. Like, you can configure this in whatever way you want to for those three variables. Now, to check what's been assigned for privileges to a folder, we can run ls-l. Now, this is for like a file inside of something. If we run a -d on top of this, it will tell us for the directory. And of course, we want to enter home, yes, and share. So you can see it's the D stands for directory, read, write, execute for user, read, write, execute for group, nothing, nothing, nothing for other. So we can now go ahead, and my notes here say start it, but we should have already started it when we did the configuration for the share. So we're going to go ahead and restart Samba. Now, we also want to allow Samba to get through our system firewall. To do that, we're going to use this command and update the rules for our firewall. So, if I was to open up a file manager here, we're on Raspberry Pi OS, and go to Networks. All right, so as you can see, we pop up. We have no printers attached to this, but here is our share that we created. And it's going to ask us for user credentials. We're going to enter yes and our password. Now we can tell it to remember until we log out, remember forever, which I haven't had the best luck with it doing, or to forget immediately. If you're going to do much work in here, you probably want to remember until you log out. And now we can connect. If all goes well. I forgot to do one thing, getting ahead of myself in the directions. Sorry about that. So the last thing we need to do is we've created the users in our system, but we need to give them Samba passwords in order to be able to access the share. That's why you saw right then that I couldn't get into the share. So we'll go ahead and do that with the command of, which I believe I have to run as sudo, as smb pass wd dash A, and then our username, which our first one's yes. And now we can give it a password. And we'll do the same thing for our user of no. Now, if I'm able to go over to our network screen, go to our server, I can connect. So if, say, I had a file that I wanted to copy, I could just copy it right over here. And there you go. You have it. So if I was to disconnect and go to network, go back to the server, and as you can see, we're disconnected. Now we could use our other user of no and log in. There's our file back again. So as you can see, we have created a file sharing server, which is essentially a NAS on an Ubuntu container without the added weight of having to virtualize an operating system like Open Media Vault, or have to use a container that somebody like Turnkey Linux created for you that you really know little to nothing about. One thing I don't like doing is using people's scripts or other people's software when I'm handling my personal data. Now, I would not put much that is sensitive on a NAS, but if you're using somebody else's software that's highly configured to do things and using it on your network, you're creating more vulnerabilities for your network. Now, there's tools penetration testers use every day that are available that we can use to test this software. And a lot of what I got into proxmox and virtualization for was doing exactly that. But simple configurations like this and knowing how to do them can even give you an ability to set up certain scenarios in your virtual network when you are penetration testing and allow you to run exploits against them. So it kind of could be a scenario where that's something you want to try your hand at. I don't really know why you would set a share up. I can tell you I use them all the time, whether it's sharing photos or music among systems or passing even notes for YouTube videos or even passing filmed videos. Like network shared files are used every day in business, and most systems use some form of Samba to do that. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, have a good night.